All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. Hopefully, white lightning is good as we. No, they were schnapps. It was fine. It's legal.
No, it's not legal.
Whatever.
You could, well, technically, we slightly repurposed because I had some old stuff from the regular. I don't, let's not go into it because we'll
Okay.
get ourselves, you know, all these
Ah,
extra IRS agents will come after us.
the laws are dumb. All right, we need a Dodge Charger painted orange. The horn that whistles Dixie. Okay.
By the way, I do not qualify for the student loan forgiveness. We're too hoity-toity, uh, which is it's going to be fired down in the Supreme Court anyways. But at least they extended the deferment so I can keep making payments without interest. But
Huzzah. All
huzzah!
right. Well, Fires of Heaven. Back to that. We left off on page 109. Because we'd gotten up to where it switches to Matt. We did a lot of talking
No,
about Rand.
109.
Uh-huh.
I thought it
Wait,
was 100.
uh,
I got my bookmark on 100.
100 is where the chapter starts.
Oh, okay.
But we didn't really have much to say about his confrontation with Jason Natail.
Ah, okay.
So,
Otherwise known as Asmodean,
mm-hmm,
who I actually liked as a character. I think it was a little weak how they connected him to the shadow, but
mm-hmm.
that could have been done better. But him as a character, as how he was portrayed, was still pretty good.
Yeah. Speaking of character, I think I was thinking about this when I was getting ready, and so we're gonna be talking about Matt, and I feel like Matt, even though I don't think his arc as a whole is necessarily good, I think his buildup is the best. From when he goes the progression from, you know, um a small town hick to freaking superhero, basically, right? I think that progression is smoother and better demonstrated necessarily than some of the others. Now he kind of Jordan kind of explains that when later when he talks about power levels, because males don't progress like women do. They jump. They go in fits and spurts. So he kind of explains Rand away later, but
Well, I think that comes to something we actually talked about last time. Was uh, how not Rand the need for what Rand needs to be is. And the same thing is with Perrin. The wolf is so anti-Perrin that it just seems like it's like his relationship with Fail. She compliments him, and the wolf compliments Perrin's methodical nature.
yeah.
And up until the point Sanderson loses the plot line, the wolf and the methodical work together to make a really cool but also productive
Mm-hmm.
character. And Rand, his I just want to be in a cottage with a wife and a child,
Mm-hmm.
and I want nothing more than that. Becoming the emperor is the huge disconnect that becomes the wedding, right? Well, with Matt, he always was an adventurer. He
Yeah.
always was an inquisitive person. He didn't want the responsibility, but at the same time, he always had the qualities that end up coalescing
Mm-hmm.
into this thing that all he needed was the knowledge of hundreds of generals to make into a being. So it was kind of a different progression. It was completely different progression.
And he had a fair amount of physical skill as well.
Hmm.
because of how he grew up. And we see that here with this scene, this opening scene with him in the book, where he's throwing knives at targets to in gambling. And we've we've already seen him do some of these things. We've seen his, keen hand-eye coordination and physical skills, but now you add on top of that, he's been messed with in a supernatural way a couple of different times now. And so we see the beginnings of some, you know, comic book hero level stuff here. I mean, he pulls a daredevil uh with the blindfolding and then throwing and hitting the target bullseye. Um but it's not unbelievable and it's not out of nowhere because we've seen all this building.
Well, there's some luck to it, which is Matt's stick, but at the same time, I think Jordan on the undercurrent of it all, he actually does a good job of using Matt to push the idea, which is true, that in some ways we make our own luck.
Mhm.
Like I said, my favorite quote from anime, and I can't even tell you what movie it was, though I think you pinpointed it, was luck just happens to be one of my skills. And it was one of those mech ones.
I think it was Macross Plus.
Yeah, I think it was Macross. I think you're right with Macross Plus. He had spiky hair. I know
Mhm.
that.
They
Uh,
all do.
that narrows it down, right?
Uh-huh.
But it was it's like a sport we can kind of all identify with basketball because most of our audience is American. I would think probably at this point all of it because we haven't
Mhm.
gotten big enough to be international. Uh, and the behind the back pass or the spin and layup from behind, uh, that looks like a blind pass, but it's not because you have full control over where you are and you've already scanned the whole parameter.
Yeah.
So if he looks at the target and he blindfolds himself, then he still knows where the target is. And if you've got extreme proprioception, which is a skill that it
Mhm.
can be adapted and is natural in some, it's actually one of my strengths when it comes to coaching and stuff, is you can blindly hit something that you've already seen before. Now, if he walked into a room with a blindfold where he didn't know where the target was and just randomly threw something and hit it, that would be complete luck.
Well, that's the added element here is because the chunk of wood that he's trying to hit is being thrown up into the air
Mm-hmm.
after he's blindfolded. So it is a moving target while he's blindfolding. So he has an idea of the trajectory it's going to take. So you can rationalize it and think it through, but then we're also told that there is something more. Um,
Well,
because
there is, but if we get to the neurobiology and you put a blindfold on, you automatically connect to your hearing and your smell and your sense of feeling a lot
Mhm.
better.
But he also rolled 6 6s 23 times in a row.
That one you can't explain with neurobiology. That one you can't. That one you
Right.
can only explain with loaded dice or luck.
Which I mean we've kind of hinted at without getting into spoiler territory, the kind of the step up, the importance that Matt is going to play in this book, and Jordan's setting it up here because he's showing us that the skills he already had have stepped up to another level because he's been messed with in a kind of supernatural way. Um, but to your point, he's still singing and drinking and gambling. So at the core, he's still doing what he does, which is why it works so well. Um, that even extends to Melindra here.
Oh,
Um,
well, when we look at parallels, and not only because he wears a wide brim hat that I put on my hat for Matt, but he's the freaking Doc Holliday of the group. I'll be your Huckleberry.
mhm,
You know, he's got that honor. He's got that country. I will live up to my promises, but I'm the wild card,
mhm.
and that's what Doc Holliday was. So it's he is that kind of persona in this whole thing. And I don't know which was based on which, or if it's just coincidence and it's a common archetype, but it's is definitely the role he plays in all of this.
Um, where's my train of thought? Oh yeah. So to your point about the neurobiology and the making your own luck, now there is, I won't go into because it's spoiler territory, but there is a Tavarin thing that happens here down the road with his connection with Melindra. That it's not just
Mm,
accident. There is some patternness to it here. But his his initial connection here was all luck, was all happenstance, seemingly, but he's operating on instinct when it comes to schmoozing the pretty girl. So he doesn't have to know the particulars of Aiel society and regard gifts and the way they handle relationships and pairing up. He doesn't have to know if he instinctively reads the room, if he instinctively can turn on the charm um when it's necessary.
I hate. Well, there's two parts to it because part of it is his luck and his instincts on the situation, reading people, but the other part of it is on her end. She kind of has to get with him no matter what because that's her mission.
Mhm.
How much are we going to spoiler? Do we get to
Let's
the
just leave it there.
conclusion? Yeah. Okay.
No, it's going to be a while before we get to
Okay.
that point.
That's yeah. Let's leave it at that because part of it was it had to happen, and the fact that it happened to him was actually the more luck
Hmm.
than the other way around. Because we look at what happens with Rand and Avienda. If it was Melindra, that could have destroyed the world
Hmm.
realistically.
um yeah, and so then the
Did I throw you way off?
no, I was just finding my page here because it there's an interesting end here, or as the scene wraps up. um when Rand shows up and he goes hustling after Rand. He wet his lips and spoke again, not a shout. Loose Theron. And Rand turned around. Matt almost wished he had not. For a time, they only looked at one another in the twilight. Matt hesitated about going closer. So we, he's showing us an outside perspective because we got the point of view perspective where the voice first popped up, and we talked about that a good bit last time, where Luce Theron, a separate voice, a separate distinct voice, popped into his head and started thinking thoughts that were not Rand's thoughts and not his life, um, letting him see uh, distinct images and and feel sensations from his previous life.
Am I moving for you?
You are frozen.
I am frozen, but you can hear me.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, as long as you can hear me, it works. What did I do?
Uh,
Check my camera. Camera's good. There's that. Okay, well, as long as you can still hear me, you can see my pretty face.
all
With
right. Well, I don't have any more thoughts on the rest of this chapter. Did you have any more thoughts on Matt and Rand's interaction here? Um,
now you're not moving. Hold
oh dear. We need to pause a second.
on. Well, now I only have an image of myself. You're moving. Okay, come on, camera. Do your thing. Start video. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. I don't know why it made me restart my video, but sorry, Scott, and any one or two other people in the audience, but we're back.
All right. Oh, what the only other thing of note really as this chapter wrapped up is Matt being Matt. Matt going back to, as you pointed out, the only part of this character growth that he doesn't want any part of is the responsibility. So he's already once again trying to get away, trying to separate, trying to just go off and wander and live his life and get away from all of this world-ending shenanigans.
Which okay, so I have to take a little bit of something back that I said earlier. Rand and his just wanting to be a private person, but he's the becoming the emperor of the world, basically, was one thing. And Perrin wanting to be meticulous and soft, but he has a savage uh internal clock, basically. Matt doesn't want responsibility, but what we keep seeing from here on out is him taking on responsibilities over and over and over and over again. We'll get to that with Ulver here soon, and we start seeing the first parts of it in this part of the book.
Yeah.
Where he can't help but take them on. Where in his mind he feels like it's thrust on him, but
all right. So chapter 4 is just back to Rand as he's going in the maiden's hold, and then more interaction with Avienda, who's still being mean.
sorry, I muted because of the dogs barking.
So still trying to find a point where things actually develop between the two of them rather than just happening suddenly.
Well, again, having spent time as a tutor and a mentor, those things do happen. And unless you've been in that situation, you don't see how it could happen in the books. But anytime you see this with psychologists, they spend a lot of time with a client, and sometimes if they can't disconnect, then they end up having some sort of relationship ish with them. If you want to go into comics, we can talk about Harley Quinn and the Joker, right? Because Harley Quinn was the Joker's psychiatrist originally in the stories. She wasn't some just flirt. So it's kind of a common thread in fiction or in real life and in fiction. So I don't think it's a big jump, as big a jump as you've kind of alluded to. It's just it could have been a little bit better spelled
a little
out.
smoother. I mean, there is, so on page 127.
But I think at the same time, though, he was trying to, and this is what I got from it, and this is why I actually appreciated this part, was when she was trying to deny it, it was there, it was there, it was there all the time. And then there was a moment where she couldn't resist anymore. And I think that actually was a little bit better of a buildup than if we had seen it softly kind of break away a little bit.
Well, that does fit her character a little more, which is an analogy that's used a couple of times throughout the series, and we saw it with one of my favorite scenes in The Dragon Reborn, with the blacksmithing scene where he talks about the difference between hard and strong. And you actually want a softer metal for certain things because a hard impact, a strong impact will shatter metal that is hard. It needs some softness to it in order to withstand a blow. In the same way that you want to bend your knees as you drop down or as you come down from a fall or a jump. You want to go with it. So Avienda, I mean, that is a part of her character, is she's having to learn the hard way about being hard versus strong. And so the idea that she wouldn't chip away, but she would just shatter does make sense. And this is one of the better scenes here, because when she's giving him the belt buckle, so page 126 and 127, when she's giving him the belt buckle that was made out of her spears and knives that had been melted down, and he was one of the three that she hated most, and so she had to make something for him. But you can tell there's more to it there. You can tell that she's exceptionally emotional and probably lying. I mean, it says in a little bit that she did lie. It just doesn't tell you what exactly she was lying about. Um, yes, Randall Thor, she suddenly sounded hoarse. For a moment, she turned her face away, eyes shut and quivering. I hate you with all of my heart. I do, and I always will. Um, you you can tell that there's more there and that she's probably lying. And then of course she she doesn't act like that all the time, because she will assume, the role uh of teacher, of companion even. And so it's only in moments like this where she gets real prickly, and then she acts like a normal person later. So you can kind of tell there's more there, um, in scenes like that. Other than that, I didn't really have much to say about that chapter.
It's a little bit of a, for lack of better words, which I usually don't choose the better words anyways, but it's a little bit of a mind fuck on her side, because he offers to have someone else teach him,
Yeah.
and she's adamant about no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no. But the reason she hates him is because she has to be his teacher, and then ultimately she knows what that leads to because she's been through the rings. And this again, fate, free will, right? We have this discussion as people because we don't have something like the rings to tell us the future. We got palm readers that are pretty much just taking your money, or tarot cards or something along those lines, which you make your own future based on what you heard. And but in this world, she saw a future in the possible futures that could happen if she refuses to go along with her future, but it goes against her basic beliefs, which Rand didn't have to deal with. Rand saw the things that were the Aiel.
Mm-hmm.
And we went through that in the end of book 4. And he didn't tear his face off like the guy in front of him
Yeah.
in the ring or the pillars did, because he had no expectations. He was the perfect person to go through that, because he's just like, oh, cool, awesome, I
Yeah.
didn't know that. He didn't have his whole life put on its head, where she had already made a promise. She has a near sister, she has all these things that are embedded in her society, and she knows she's going to contradict that if she stays around him. but also she knows that the world's going to end if she doesn't. So what do we do with that?
Mm-hmm.
And realistically, as an Aiel, it's actually a really big decision where you you almost choose the world ending to contradict your beliefs. So she's in that situation right now. So to hate him, she's actually telling the truth. But she also knows she's lying.
Mm-hmm. Which we get in the next chapter when Egwene sees that she's been striped, she's been beaten, uh, and Bayer says that that Avienda came and asked her to do it because she had lied twice today, but she wouldn't say what or to whom. So Bayer gave her some extra for bothering her. Uh, because as she points out, if she has G towards someone, if she needs to meet Toe, then it should be to that person. It's not a Bayer's business. It should be between Avienda and whoever it was that she lied to. But of course, Avienda can't do that because that's part of the whole mess that she's in. Because she also had that would also add to her toe to Elaine, who's supposed to be her near sister, and she's supposed to be watching out over Rand for her. Yeah.
See,
There's a lot of stuff that happens in this next chapter, but I don't know how
this
much
is
of it we want to get into.
this is just evidence that us sexy dudes can mess everything up for all these women. That's the lesson
Ladies. Mm.
for the ladies. Ladies, man. That's a stupid movie too, but it was entertaining.
Uh,
Tim Meadows? Was it? Yeah,
yeah, that was Tim Meadows.
Tim Meadows. Yeah, that's a good movie. Stupid but good. Good and stupid. Kind of like Tommy Boy, which is the best good stupid movie ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I thank you and your family for introducing me to that. I have the Holy Schnikes edition and watch it every once in a while. Although we did educate some little kids on Quest for the Holy Grail this last time around.
Good choice.
Nope. But it was Ben's idea. Ben
Mm-hmm.
Ben loves the no, he loves the who are you so wise in the
In the
ways of
ways of
science?
science. My liege.
My liege.
Uh, that's good stuff. Uh, um, so jumping to the end of this chapter while we're on this train of thought with Avienda, so page 154, um, because they are apprentices and they didn't perform their task to the wise one's satisfaction, they're told to go run around the tents 10 times or something like that, which, you know, is a long freaking way, uh, barefooted and naked. So
In the cold.
in the cold, because it's really freaking cold in the desert at night. Um, and Egwene says, I know I don't understand Giotto, Egwene began, and Avienda laughed. You say you do not understand, Aes Sedai, yet you show that you live by it. Egwene regretted maintaining that lie with her. It had been hard work to get Avienda to call her simply Egwene, and sometimes she slipped back. But it had to be kept with everyone if it was to hold with anyone. You are Aes Sedai and strong enough in the power to overcome Amos and Melaine together, Avienda continued. But you said that you would obey, and so you scrub pots when they say scrub pots, and you run when they say run. You may not know Giotto, but you follow it. It was not the same thing at all, of course. Egwene is thinking. She gritted her teeth and did as she was told, because that was the only way to learn dream walking, and she wanted to learn everything more than anything else she could imagine. To even think that she could live by this foolish Giotto was simply silly. So she's being told by someone who lives it and understands it that you're doing it whether you know it or not because of your strength of character, your adherence to your word, um and uh, your willingness to put up with tasks and punishment that from the outside looking in you shouldn't have to put up with, but yet you do. But Egwene rationalizes it because to her, Giotto, as she says in her mind, is silly, and she couldn't possibly live by it. So she's rationalizing it away because, oh well, I'm doing this as an exchange. That's what I'm doing here. But in a sense, that's what Giotto is for the Aiel. It is a societal exchange of honor and obligation between peoples, between individuals and peoples as a whole.
So this makes me think of this meme here. You ever see the skeptical kid meme?
Yeah.
One of them I saw, and I didn't have it queued up, so I just got up the base picture. It was, so you drive to a place to run on a treadmill because you eat too much. And that's what I think of when I think of Aiel punishment, right? Because their punishment is doing work that actually produces nothing. And so we get on a treadmill and run, and it actually produces nothing. We pick up dumbbells and walk around the room in a farmer's walk, but we're not actually pushing a wheelbarrow full of productive stuff. We do power cleans, but we're not clean and jerking hay bales into a trailer, which is exactly what it is a clean and jerk.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a sign of the luxury that we have now, that we have to do these things that were once tasks to get things done. And for the Aiel, that's punishment. And I think Jordan was making a statement there with that. It was dig a hole and then fill it back up.
Yeah. Well, that's the worst punishment to an Aiel.
But yeah, something that has no purpose. If you do manual labor that has no purpose, that's the worst punishment for them. And we do it now people pay me $75 an hour to do labor that does nothing.
Did you have any thoughts on the wise ones and Moiraine and whatnot here in this chapter? We talked about it a little bit last time when Rand was talking to Moiraine and Egwene about his plans about taking the Aiel across the Dragon Wall to secure uh secure lands and get people to follow him. Um and there's just some more fleshing out of that with Moiraine and the wise ones talking amongst each other about it.
Not much. It's kind of a culture shock, because they're trying to figure each other out, because they're the equivalent across both divides, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think this is a little bit of a failure of the books. Is you get a sense that the wise ones have it right, and the Aes Sedai have it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
In this book especially, but in especially these chapters and the interactions when Moiraine is in a spot where she's kind of subjugated to their will. But realistically, there are plus or minuses to both of their thought processes and their ways of thinking. And this is one of the again failures, I think, is he gives a lot of credit to the wise ones, and a lot of failure to the Aes Sedai
Mhm.
when there's failures on both sides. And then we see some of the failures later on the wise ones, but you don't see it to the degree, or at least to the impact that you get. So it's similar to what we see now with science versus indigenous thinking, right? Uh, yeah, there's some benefits to how people thought back in the day when they were unrestrained by a rigid approach, but at the same time, it we don't have modern medicine or bridges or houses the way we have now without modern ways of thinking. So it's I think he could have done a little bit better with the
Mhm.
interplay there, but at the same time, she's one woman amongst many of equal power and prestige in a different way. So it's really hard to tell at this point.
Yeah. Well, you get a little bit of that arrogance and bias from the wise ones when they're talking to Moraine, because we, the reader, know that Moraine talking about these plans coming to fruition, and as the wise one says, plans of your White Tower, not of us, which is true, that they're concerned with the Aiel, not the White Tower's plans, and doubly so because we, the reader, know that the tower has fallen and schismed.
Mhm.
And so there is no plans coming to fruition anymore, and Moraine just doesn't know that yet. Um, but at the same time, the wise ones aren't recognizing the the underlying truths of what Moraine is trying to say, which is, and because she's not recognizing them, it's not you need us, no, you need us, it's we need each other. It's what Game of Thrones should have been that annoyed us all when it got towards the end, is the entire buildup was there is an existential threat that is going to kill us all, and we're sitting here bickering and fighting and killing each other over over political power. And
Which
that
in the end, spoiler for Game of Thrones, they took care of the existential threat, and you had a whole season of crap after that.
and it became all about the political power that we were supposed to put aside so we could deal with the thing. But anyway, um and that is something that people in this world, this setting, are very slow to learn, um uh, often to their detriment. Okay, so then the Dark Hounds show up. um and we've seen Balefire before, but this is when it's actually explained, right? The effects of it. I don't know that's even hinted before at what Balefire is and how it
I
works.
I think some of the Forsaken talk about it in one of their meetings. I think Lanfear does. Because remember, even they're afraid of it.
Yes. So
Yeah.
we do get a little bit of that
And remember,
from
at
time
this
to time.
point, a couple of their number are already destroyed by it.
Yes.
So there, I think there was a meeting where Lanfear brings it up and is actually pro not using it.
Yeah, because after the Dragon Reborn, because
Mm-hmm.
there's a reference to Balal being gone,
Mm-hmm.
because Moiraine nuked him. But now we find out why that is. Um, it's a great interaction, and it kind of portrays one of the things we griped about, which is after the first couple of books, the three boys aren't really together anymore, and so you don't get those interactions. And you've got a good one here between Rand and Matt. Um, and then here's where I wanted to get to. Um, So page 165. Moraine has been trying to get him to stand still so she can talk about Balefire and explain what he did and why it's dangerous. And Rand is being Rand, the arrogant Rand that we've talked about the last several times we've talked about him. We can talk tomorrow, Rand said, cutting her off. Lan's face hardened further, if such was possible. Blah blah blah. We find out about the Foxhead medallion. So we learn quite a bit in this chapter, actually, because we learn even more about dark hounds than we knew before, about their bite or even their saliva is poison. We learned about the Foxhead medallion. Please, Rand, Moraine said, and the open pleading in her voice halted him in his tracks. He had never heard anything like that from her before. The tone seemed to offend Lan. I thought you had become a man, the warder said harshly. Is this how a man behaves? You act like an arrogant boy. Lan practiced the sword with him and liked him, Rand thought. But if Moraine said the right word, the warder would do his best to try and kill him. I will not be with you forever, Moraine said urgently. Her hands gripped her skirts so hard that they trembled. I might die in the next attack. I could fall from my horse and break my neck, or take a dark friend's arrow through the heart, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so this is where their relationship kind of shifts and softens a little bit. But Lan is right, and we've kind of mentioned this before, that this is where you see Rand's progression into someone who's very different than how he started off, and someone who really kind of starts to become an unlikable character, because he doesn't have he doesn't have enough people around him who will set him down the way Nynaeve would, and the way Lan does here. That he's being kind of a jerk, but as soon as Lan snaps at him, he does kind of straighten up. Because Lan is someone that he respects, someone he has that mentor relationship with. So if he says, "Hey, you're acting like a child," he's not going to explode at Lan the way he would if Egwene said that to him.
Mm-hmm. Which we talked about SEL in the last time we were on. We're going to go into a deep dive into it, but it needs a man's touch. And you brought up Lan and Nynaeve, and we've talked about how Nynaeve, her biggest influence was her father.
Mm-hmm.
In the books, not in the show.
Yep.
But her biggest influence was her father. So Rand needed a man's touch. And he got that with Tam, but then he lost it. He lost it in a very developmental time, in a very tumultuous time.
He lost it doubly, because he lost it literally when he got separated from Lan,
mm-hmm.
Tam. From Tam, and Tam is no longer there to guide him, to help him. But then even before that happened, you had that psychological break of, I'm not your birth father.
Mm-hmm.
You were found. And so he's already has that worming its way through his mind.
And then since then, Lan has been there, but the biggest influences have been Moiraine and Varen and Celine, who's not only not nurturing him in the proper way, but also trying to manipulate him.
Mm-hmm.
All three of them. What else? Those are the big three, I think. Because they're all doing it in different ways. But the same outcome. Females manipulating a male. And for the reasons. Moiraine and Varen for great reasons, and Celine for her own. We know now Lanfear for her own.
Mhm.
Uh, but
And now the wise ones.
gosh darn it, we're not allowed to say it. I wanted to say other words, but gosh darn it, we're not allowed to say it. But he's a man. And these are three women manipulating him. Let's just give it three different Amber Heards in this situation, right? In their own way. And they don't understand him. They can't understand him. They can kind of understand him, but they can't fully understand him.
Well, and then you add to that if we're gonna get a little political here,
Why
it's
not? That's our shtick,
it,
man.
it's why a toxic feminist cannot have a rational discussion with a man. If a great example was the Jordan Peterson interview with that BBC lady. And
Oh shit, what was her name?
I can't remember her name, but you know, one of the reasons it went so viral is because it was so illustrative of that break in logic, because she just could not comprehend what he was saying, and she kept twisting what he was saying, and it wasn't even she wasn't a hack either, which is what made it work. Because there was an element of Gachu, trying to frame a Gacha question, but she was also being an actual journalist and interviewer and trying to dig down and search through and get answers from him, so that he was able she asking follow-up questions and trying to pressure him on things. And so that just helped you see that she could not understand what he was saying because she was so biased against him. And you have it here starkly in this fantasy setting, because, and again, this is why it boggles my mind the way they did what they did in the series, in the Prime series, because you had the perfect excuse to illustrate toxic masculinity, because powerful men are literally insane. They are literally corrupted. They can literally become be be forced into evil.
They can grab them by the V.
Yep.
Yeah.
So with all of these manipulative women, especially the Aes Sedai, but even the wise ones, knowing that he is a man who can channel, knowing that he is the Kinslayer reborn and what all that means, they're besides their inability to see where he's coming from because they don't share that same background and those same masculine traits, they're already strongly biased against him. He's already an enemy. And that was where that Peterson interview became so immediately explosive, is because this is someone who viewed Peterson and people like him as an enemy, as someone who is toxic. And that's going to affect the way, and you see this in the different way the different women try to manipulate Rand.
Let's move on because I've got so many thoughts.
Okay.
And well, no, it's not new thoughts based on what you just said, although they were in line with it. It's the fact that it covers things we were going to talk about with our other section of this. I, I guess I'll leave it at the if anybody thinks we're living in the patriarchy, you're an idiot. Because if males had their way, it would look nothing like suburbia that I see outside my window right now. So I'll leave it at that.
Um,
Jordan understood that.
that's why the primary piece of imagery is the yin yang symbol, and why in this broken age you only have half of the symbol. And therefore, and so it's mentioned numerous times that the greatest works of the Age of Legends were done by men and women working together.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai, which is simply the white teardrop, because it's only that half. And the other half, the Black Dragon's Fang, is scrawled on people's door as an ill omen.
So give me where you want to go with actual text wise, and then we need to go into spoilers because that exact point right there.
Okay. Um, well, the last thought here, text wise, as this wraps up,
We got to get at least 100 pages.
well, in this chapter, do you have any thoughts on, um, so the way he explains Balefire is why I've never liked time travel, most time travel stories in sci-fi, because you start messing with time and you start to unravel the universe. I like the way Jordan explains this, and it makes me curious if he kind of had similar feelings as, as a physicist, especially about time travel and messing with the timeline, because that's what you're doing with Balefires. You're messing with the timeline, and the more you do it, reality itself can literally unravel.
Yeah, now we're getting into quantum physics, which hmm uh I did my quantum physics 101 with Dr. Rolligator. Uh it's everything is in exactly the same time in multiple places all at once. And that includes our matter and light and everything else. And that confuses a lot of things when we're trying to
Mm-hmm.
rationalize, right? So I can't even tell you where we need to go from there. But when you talk about balefire, you would have to include an element that can put a stop gap to that on a specific thing. And that, as far as I know, and someone who's a more in tune physicist than I am could probably point you in the right direction. But in my studying, that doesn't exist at this point. So we can't eliminate something from the world or the universe, I should say, the universe as we speak. But at the same time, if we could, it would be done for all time because you would have to eliminate it for all time to even eliminate it at all.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it in these terms before, but I think what Jordan is saying here is that Balefire breaks one of the fundamental laws of physics, which is matter cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be
Mm-hmm.
changed, converted. And what Balefire is doing is it is destroying matter. It is not, you get blasted with a fireball and your matter turns to ash, but it's still there. It's just ash and smoke now.
Well,
You
that's not necessarily true because you can convert it into energy.
No, that's what I'm saying. But the way Balefire is described, I think what he's saying is that that matter is destroyed. it's as if it was never there for that period of time, and that has all these ripple effects because now all of this other matter interacted with something that never existed.
Mm-hmm.
But that leads to the question, though. All right, it makes perfect sense why even the Forsaken wouldn't want to do it, because they have very tangible, mortal, carnal desires and goals that they're trying to achieve. But we were told way back, halfway through the Eye of the World, about the Dark One wants to break the wheel of time. So what would he care? And why wouldn't he push his minions to keep using it? Because that would achieve his goal of breaking the wheel of time, would it not?
Well, there's an easy answer to that one because they understand it. But Randall Thor does not understand it. And he wants to push the person who doesn't understand the repercussions to use
Mm.
it.
Yeah. He definitely wants to turn the dragon. That is his primary
Mm-hmm.
goal. We are told repeatedly. That's really what he wants.
Well, and the title of the next book explains that.
Yeah. Yeah.
He wants him to be the catalyst chaos. Right. I think this is a good segue to go into spoilers.
Okay. Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to add to that before we?
Um, well, Lanfear pops up here at the end of this chapter.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take your word for it because I'm gonna have to take my lighting into account when we go to spoilers. So
Mhm. Um, and oh yeah, well, this is set up in the prologue, and now we see it because Lanfear pops in to tell him that Ravine is attacking him, that Ravine sent the Dark Hounds.
mm.
Which again was part of their plan, is trying to direct where Rand is looking so they can prepare for him and deal with him. All right, so, but I don't think there's anything much more to say there, except then Jordan moves the action along rather quickly. But let's transition to spoilers. So if you're following along for the first time, then so long. But if this is a reread for you as well, then we'll be getting into spoiler territory. All right, so what were your spoiler thoughts?
Well, I probably spoiled a lot during the regular episode. Uh, but well, shoot, we spoiled so much already.
Did we? I thought we did a decent job of beating around the bush for some things.
I like beating in the bush, but it's giggity.
Well, what were you wanting to transition for? I thought it seemed like you had a specific thought there of why we're going to spoilers now.
Hold on, my thoughts are so random. What were we talking about?
Uh, well, we were talking about Balefire and unraveling the
Oh, okay. So
um
we got a good spoiler here. This is from Jordan's own mouth. Matt dying and living again.
mhm.
That apparently wasn't him being hung.
Yeah, he wasn't dead yet.
He wasn't dead. Yeah, right. So we get to Balefire. We see at the end of this book that he dies because he's struck by lightning.
Mhm.
But then Rand kills Robin with Balefire.
A whole lot of it.
A whole lot of it, a big chunk of it. And Matt is alive again because time unravels going back. It's actually, you're correct in your analysis in the previous section that this was slightly weak with the whole the universe, the fact that balefire undoes stuff, because I almost wonder if we use the analogy of the weaving of the wheel, how that works out. Is it, I'm thinking of a loom,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, you're putting all the weaves in place. Is it stopping the loom, taking it out, and then teasing it back out again, and then coming back, right? That's the only kind of visual I can come up in my head. And that takes a lot more than just one thread.
Well, okay, so the loom analogy, we're weaving a tapestry here, we're weaving the Bayou tapestry,
Mm-hmm.
and so when someone dies, normally that thread is tied off, but it stays in the tapestry. If that person is killed with barrel fire, that thread is not tied off, it is cut from, from the end back to wherever. Well, now you have a section of the tapestry that is structurally weakened because it doesn't have that thread there to hold. And if you start more and more threads of those, the tapestry starts to fray, starts to get full of holes. It's no longer holding itself together with all those threads, woven into a structure.
Okay, so that would make sense in a way of kind of destabilizing the world. But it wouldn't make sense in the correcting of all of the things before it, because then they would just be loose threads.
Well, no, I think that is part of it. I think the correcting, the hitting the rewind button, I think that is part of the fraying. I think that somehow, in the loom analogy, that somehow uh weakens those threads as well, or weakens that patch of the tapestry because uh because the wheel has had to weave backwards in a sense.
So let's stick with Matt here. So Matt is basically alive again because of this reweave.
Oh.
Because of this reweaving
Uh-huh.
of Robin going back. Uh, so does his becoming a loose thread determine the path he takes forward? Or is he now independent of the path he could take forward because the thread he was originally woven into isn't there anymore?
The wheel's going to pick back up, but that part of it is going to be still weakened so that there's a cumulative effect. So that, okay, well, the the weave can absorb a certain amount of weakness without the whole tapestry falling apart.
So what I'm getting at is we're talking about Tavarin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Matt's Tavarin, Perrin's Tavarin, Rand's Tavarin, right? And the wheel weaves around them to some degree. But if you're a snubbed out thread and you're Tavarin, and yet the thread that snubbed you out is snubbed out in a retrospective perspective,
Mm-hmm.
then are you Tavarin?
You still are, because your thread is still there. But this actually is addressed at some point in the series. I can't remember exactly where in the books, that if the pattern is weakened enough, then it will no longer be able to weave around those Tavaren. So if the pattern is weakened enough, then that Tavaren force will no longer be as strong or will completely dissipate. And then they're as is kind of said as analogy, their threads will kind of be hanging unprotected and it will make them easier to take out.
So at that point, we would have true free will.
Yeah, or more so.
More so, more so.
Oh, dang it. Okay. I had more thoughts than stupid things getting in my brain. Um
No, shoot out stupid
it
things.
it
Yeah.
it still makes me wonder though, because now I will say, to your point, kind of talking about the end of this book in Ravine, I do think it was a place where maybe Jordan dropped the ball and could have had some more foreshadowing and more consistency, because we see later as the pattern starts to weaken, as the dark one starts to break more and more free, that especially when balefire is used, it causes a noticeable ripple in reality then and there. And he used so much balefire, you would think, well, except he used it in the world of dreams. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
maybe then he wouldn't see that ripple of reality because he wasn't in reality. So maybe
Well,
that ripple would affect him less.
and that's the thing. It's we have to pay attention as we come to the end, because if balefire is used on an individual and we see a downstream effect of time, we have to look at everything that person did
Yeah.
in that downstream effect of time.
You see that in the last battle. There's a major use of a huge blast of balefire that literally causes the ground to start to break apart,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how much reality is unraveling. But to that point, that's what the Dark One wants.
Mm-hmm.
So my only guess is that he he wants reality to unravel when he's ready to strike. So maybe that's why he holds back his minions from using balefire, so that he can unleash it when he is most likely to triumph.
Yeah, I still think that the fact that they're all from the age of legends, they understand it, gets in the way of that plan,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, he wants chaos, but they want what they want.
Yeah, except to Shamael, who's the mad philosopher.
Yeah, except for Shama, who's the mad philosopher. Yeah. They want what they want. And Ravine wants to rule
He
nations.
wants power and putang.
Yeah, power and Putin. I was gonna say rule nations and court women, but power and Putang is the street slang for that. Samael wants to not be a little man. Uh Grendel wants what Grendel wants. Huh. I would be one of her servants. That's for sure. I picture her as Kate Upton, by the way.
Hmm.
Yeah. She
That's fitting. That is very fitting.
That
Yeah.
is very fitting. Yeah. So if anybody objects to that, you can come fight me.
Yeah.
406 Overlook Drive, in Friendswood, Texas. So you can come fight me if you don't see it. Kate Upton as Grandel. Moghedian, I see her as shit. I'm blanking on the name. The girl from Fight Club. She was
Mm.
also in Harry Potter movies as the crazy witch.
Because she can do dark and creepy so well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. God, what am I? I'm blanking on the name.
I don't remember.
Oh, okay. Uh Semirage, I can't picture. It was Iman uh in Jordan's vision. The girl from Conan the Barbarian.
Hmm.
Yeah. Uh so I mean, I guess that works, but from a personality standpoint, I can't think of a figure.
Yeah.
Maybe Sharon Stone, the way she was just so stoic about murder.
Hmm.
Alvieren could be a lot of people. Just a minute. She could be Hillary Clinton, realistically.
Yikes. Uh, all right. Well, did you have any other spoiler thoughts that we wanted to get into before I finally go feed myself because I'm starving?
No, not really.
Yeah, I don't think I had any either. Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening, and I'm kind of eager to just get to it. We'll try and get a little farther next time, which theoretically shouldn't be that hard because it's a lot of action. Just stuff is happening, um, and it's just a matter of picking the more important things and why we think they stand out and they work so well.
Let me check our comments real
Ah,
quick.
yes.
Uh, YouTube. Okay, on our last episode, only 2 comments. I think Aemon had children. There's mention somewhere of Eridol imprisoning the son of Aemon.
Hmm.
That I did not know.
Hmm. That rings a bell.
And Scott says that Eldrin, who is in that family line, is a parallel of Egwene. So he's pulling from some other sources. I think we're gonna have to say we have to research that one a little
Hmm.
bit more before we comment. But I mean, it's perfectly possible because of the way the the bloodline is being kind of pushed in the first 4 books,
Hmm.
first 5 books, uh, especially with Matt. And if we do go down the line that he is reincarnate King Aemon, then we could look at Egwene as one of those same things. Even though I'm with Scott, Egwene annoys the hell out of me. Uh, but it's more for me her imposing her values on everybody else,
Hmm.
and her values were a crash course in everything because by the time she's imposing her values, she's like 18 years old,
Yep.
which even for a female that's undeveloped.
Right. She does have a lot of lived experience crammed into the, you know, 12 to 18 months there of since the book
But
series
also a lot of
started.
trauma,
Yeah,
a lot of
and that
trauma that will make
and
you.
that comes through.
Well, but not only that, what we understand from the psychological realm at this point is how you come out of trauma depends on how you are originally as well.
Mm,
And so if she's 18 years old, able to lead people who are hundreds of years old, she's probably a little bit psychotic in and of herself, which we can say for Rand as well. which is the kind of mind fuck we get voting and stuff is
Hmm.
sometimes you need a little bit of psychopathy to get the job done, but at the same time you want the just right amount. And with Rand and Egwene, I don't think you get the just right amount, which is why the people around them are so important. And I think with Rand, you get an influence from the people around him a lot better than you get with Egwene.
Hmm.
So Rand, you get the influence of Perrin, you get the influence of Matt, you get the influence of Cadsuane, you get the influence of Egwene, you get the
Tam and Lan and Rourke
Tam and
and yeah.
Lan, and you get all of these influence uh kind of sources for him. But with Egwene, you get Swan till she develops her own style, and then she even starts ignoring her.
Hmm.
And Rand did that to some extent, but then he went back. And Egwene never goes back. She just gets the power and goes. Whereas Rand gets the power and then starts losing the power and then goes back. And then he actually has the ultimate power at that point. And even still, even less than he thinks he does, because Perrin has to watch his back and Matt has to come in to save the day.
Hmm.
And with Egwene, she ultimately just dies.
Yeah, it is. It is not a very satisfying end for Egwene, that is for sure.
No,
Uh,
I'm cool with the sacrifice. I'm just not cool with the fact that
I think it's fitting that she died. I just thought it could have been built to and executed better.
yeah.
But I, we've said that about a lot of stuff that happens in those last couple of books, last book especially, but really the last couple of books. We've said that a lot, but we'll get more into it. We'll get more into it in this book because that you really see the beginnings of that here with Egwene's training with the wise ones. That's why I wanted to take at least a little bit of time to look at it there. And then of course we're going to get the jump to, you know, we're going to deal more with the White Tower through this. So this is really setting up um what Egwene becomes, you know. So we'll keep an eye on it as it progresses to kind of point out some of the things you were talking about. All right, well, that's all I got for today.
I hate to leave us on a somber note,
Oh
but
no.
uh so you brought up Egwene talking about not believing what she's saying. And my first thought was like the Robin DiAngelos of the world.
Mm,
The Ibram X Kendis of the world, which are spouting out what they know people want to hear, but they don't actually believe it themselves.
yeah, well, thanks for bringing it down.
Sorry to bring it down at the last minute
Try
there,
and pick
but
it back up next time.
I can get it up. I can get it up whenever we want.
On
If
that note,
if
we'll
not,
see.
we got a pill for that. We're good. We're
If
good.
not, on that note, we'll see y'all next time.
All right. See you next time. We're gonna talk serious stuff next time. I don't know when we're gonna get on again, but
Yep.
uh we have to keep going into SEL. What else are we talking about?
Ugh.
Student loan forgiveness.
You want to talk about the CDC gaslighting us all?
Oh, yeah, that's constant.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, yeah, I can go about that all day long. But what else? We got to do some fitness stuff.
Oh, okay.
Oh, by the way,
Ugh.
I am currently filming some stuff. I'm gonna relaunch the Real Fitness YouTube channel. I figured out the direction I want to go after all these years. And it actually took a client hiring me to do something for his daughter distance to kind of get that rolling.
Hmm.
So finally got a fire under my ass, and I'm getting that going. So I will be doing that. Uh, and if anybody wants to follow that, it's Real Fitness on YouTube. Easy to find. Uh, I need to organize it a little bit because there's some stuff on there already that's kind of stupid. So I want to figure out how to like move things around, which I should have done for this channel too. Uh, Anything else?
That's all I got.
Nope. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to be in the sticks this weekend doing work and going to a funeral, unfortunately, because one of my uncles passed away. Uh, and then we'll get back to it next week, sometime in the evening, I'm assuming.
Yep. Yep.
All right. See y'all later.
Later.